Harry's Wife, Part 101.58. Bring forth the Princess Royal. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor, continuing to explain the various dynamics involving a range of narcissists, and doing so using video material, broadcast news, newspaper articles, enabling you to understand more about narcissism. Peeling back the layers, lifting the bonnet, or the hood, dependent on where you're from, so that you get underneath and understand what's truly occurring. I turn to an article by Lauren Wellbank from cafemom.com, which tells us King Charles could change the line of succession in order to protect the crown. A potential flex here by King Charles III for the purposes of protecting the monarchy. In the film Excalibur by John Boorman, fantastic film, not only do we get the delights of Helen Mirren shimmying around on the screen, but also the fantastic tale of King Arthur. And in that, it's often stated that the king and the land are one. When the king ails, so does the land. When the king is in rude health, the land blossoms and blooms. That suggestion that the king and the land are inextricably linked and that the land is an extension of the king is, of course, commensurate with the concept of the narcissist seeing everything else as an extension of themselves, bolting those things onto them, absorbing them, subsuming them into the world of the narcissist. Similarly, the monarchy is an extension of Charles. It is a residual benefit, which allows him to assert control over people, draw fuel from their reactions. It also adds to additional residual benefits, allows him access to networks that hitherto he may not have had, wealth, fame, and of course it also aids with character trait acquisition. Naturally, such a valuable asset needs to be protected, and in his worldview, it's an unconscious extension of him, with the consequence that his narcissism must act to protect this most valuable of assets. Accordingly, that's the mindset behind it. Now, for him, consciously, he will see it as this is an appropriate institution which needs to continue, must be preserved, and therefore what's the best way of doing this? He will see it more in terms of protecting it for the sake of the monarchy. His narcissism sees it, subconsciously, as about protecting monarchy for its use that it serves him. How does he propose to go about this? Well, according to the article, it states the royal line of succession changed on September the 8th when Queen Elizabeth died and King Charles took her place. Now, one royal expert is saying that Charles needs to make some fast decisions about what the remaining line of succession would look like to protect the family line, and Prince George in particular. Royal commentator Robert Jobson says the king needs to put protections in place for George. With the Queen's death, George is now second in line to the throne. Because the boy is just 9 years old, it seems hard to imagine he'll be taking over as head of the family any time soon. But according to Robert, George's rule was something the Queen worried about a lot. Tragedy could start George's reign while he's still too young to be successful. If something happens to both Charles and Prince William, George will have to step up and head the monarchy. Given his age, this would require a prince or princess regent, something Robert is desperate to see Charles figure out before it's too late. Now, it has to be said that at the moment there's no suggestion that King Charles has any ill health issues. There he was, striding along at his mother's funeral, looking in rude health. He's 73 years old, but there doesn't appear to be any suggestion that there could be a problem there. And, of course, his son William, a strapping fellow, Big Willie Styley, and again, whilst there could be some form of tragedy that would occur that would mean that George would start his reign in minority, it doesn't look particularly likely. But these things have to be addressed. Returning to the article. It would require a prince or princess regent. And, at the moment, this task would traditionally fall to Harry. But as a non-working royal, this cannot be, Robert explained to the Express. Given Harry's current relationship with his family, we can't say he'd be too keen on taking on the job anyway. Now, there's also the point, of course, could you imagine the reaction of the royal family that if there was a regency situation and that the person guiding George was Harry, who of course is being controlled by you-know-who. In such circumstances, one could well imagine that the young George would well be influenced in a malign fashion by Harry's wife. She would puppet Harry, as she has done, and we've seen so many times in parts passing, and this would be a tremendous opportunity to her. Her narcissism could not resist the opportunity to manipulate George also, for the purposes of her own benefit. One could see that it would be done to try and settle scores with other members of the royal family, the more outlying members, those that Harry's wife has painted black. So, for instance, it may well be, if they're still alive, that she would seek to settle scores with the Princess Royal, Prince Andrew perhaps, Prince Edward, certainly Sophie, Countess of Wessex, who has been giving it the old stink eye to Harry's wife as of late. So this, although it's an unlikely event, were it to happen, this is something that, of course, would be a wonderful opportunity for a narcissist such as Harry's wife to lay her hands on somebody that's got a degree of power within the royal family to utilise that to her advantage. But how might this be dealt with? Well, the article explains Princess Anne seems like a likely candidate. The Queen's daughter is the most likely person to be put into this role, according to Robert. Charles surely would want to break with precedent and give this task to his sister, the Princess Royal, who has been a pillar of support. While it may be a great idea for the royal family, it's something that needs to be decided sooner rather than later, because it requires an Act of Parliament to be executed. This should be something Charles has been mulling over for a while. The Queen didn't exactly keep her concerns about George to herself. This is something the Queen was very worried about, often encouraging William not to fly by helicopter to his Norfolk home, Anmer Hall, Robert had previously shared. In fact, insiders said she once forbid him from taking off. Knowing how much this bothered the Queen, there could already be a plan put together. Charles has a lot on his plate right now. Not only has he been mourning the loss of his mother privately, but he's also been doing so publicly with countless memorial services in her honour. Now that the Queen has been laid to rest, we're willing to bet tackling this task has moved to the top of his to-do list. Accordingly, undoubtedly advised, and of course wanting to secure the monarchy as an extension of himself, and recognising the threat that would be posed if Harry and his handler somehow had access to a regency situation, it's natural that he would want to head this one off at the pass. Whilst I say circumstances are that it's unlikely to occur, these are the things that have to be planned for. But it does again give us a useful insight with regard to how the narcissism of Charles views the monarchy and what it does for him, and also, of course, the salacious opportunity that is provided to another narcissist, Harry's wife, were she able to bring influence to bear upon a young George. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.